The crew's decision had been made. They wouldn't hand him over like a science project. They would protect him, even if it meant going against the Galactic Council's orders. It wasn't just about rules anymore. It was about what felt right. The ship's communication system went silent after they sent their reply. No more messages. No more instructions. That silence felt heavy. Everyone knew the council wouldn't just let it go. A few days passed quietly. The survivor stayed calm, never asked what was happening. He just trained. Not in a gym or using machines, but in quiet corners of the ship. Push-ups, running drills, stretching routines. His body had been shaped by a wild planet, and he didn't want to lose that edge. Some crew members watched him from a distance. One of them whispered, "He's not like us anymore." Another replied, "Maybe he's more human than all of us." We gave up when things got hard. He didn't. Just when things began to feel settled. The alarm sounded. A warning flashed across the screen, an unknown object. Approaching, large, fast, unidentified. The crew ran to their stations. Scanners picked it up. Pitt was alive. Not a ship. Not a satellite. A creature. Something had followed them. Everyone turned toward the survivor. His face changed. Not with fear, but with recognition. He looked at the screen, then said that thing. "It's from the planet." The crew stared in disbelief. How could something survive space travel? "It's one of the older predators," he explained. "I thought they couldn't leave the atmosphere. I was wrong." The creature slammed into the ship's outer shield. Lights flickered. Alarms kept ringing. Weapons were fired, but the creature was fast. It's twisting around in space like it had been born there. Systems started failing one by one. "We can't fight this thing." Someone yelled. That's when the man stood up. "I'll go." The crew turned to him. "Go where?" they asked. "Outside." They thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He suited up quickly, not in the regular space armor, but in his patched-up gear, modified with parts he had collected over the years. It looked rough, but it had saved his life on the planet. And now he was going to use it again. He grabbed a heat lance, small explosive charge, and said calmly, "Open the airlock." The captain hesitated, but then nodded. Outside, in the emptiness of space, the creature moved like a shadow. Big, fast, hungry, but so was he. He launched himself toward it, using the ship's small boosters. The crew watched on the screen as the battle unfolded. Silent, deadly, quick. He dodged the creature's limbs, struck it with the lance, and placed the charge near what looked like its chest. Then he kicked off, flying back toward the ship. Just as the explosion lit up the dark, pieces of the creature floated in space. He drifted back, almost unconscious, his suit cracked, oxygen low. The crew rushed to pull him inside. He had saved them again. This time, there was no silence. People clapped, cheered. Some had tears in their eyes. He lay on the floor, breathing hard, but smiling for the first time. One crew member said softly, "We didn't rescue him. He rescued us." It was true. This man who had once been forgotten, alone on a Deathworld, had become their strongest protector. Not because of strength alone, but because he had faced fear and death and came back stronger. He wasn't just a survivor anymore. He was a reminder that sometimes when everything is lost, humanity finds a way to rise. The battle was over, but the ship was quiet. People moved carefully through the halls, repairing systems, checking for damage, and whispering about what had just happened. No one could believe it, that creature. It had come from the same planet he had survived on. It had followed them across space. And yet somehow he had faced Eton 1. The survivor lay in the medbay, hooked to oxygen, body bruised and tired. But he was alive. The medical staff worked. Silently, respectfully, didn't need much care. His body, hardened by years on that brutal world, was already healing. A few hours later, he sat up slowly and looked around. One of the engineers smiled at him and said, "You really saved us." Again, he didn't respond with words, just gave a small nod as if it wasn't a big deal. But for the crew, it meant everything. Later that day, the ship received another message from the Galactic Council. This time, It wasn't just a warning. Transport vessel had been dispatched. Official orders. They wanted the survivor taken to a special facility somewhere far from public eyes. The reason? For further research and observation? Crew gathered in the meeting room. The mood was heavy. They don't see him as a person, someone said. They see him as a threat, another added. The captain stayed silent for a moment, then finally spoke. He's not a threat. He's a symbol, a reminder of what a human can become. When everything is taken away, no one disagreed. But the orders were clear. If they refused again, there would be consequences. That evening, the captain met with him in private. You heard about the new orders? The captain asked. He nodded. They'll come for you. And this time, they won't ask nicely. He looked out the window, eyes scanning the stars. Then he said quietly, Maybe it's time. I disappear. The captain frowned. What do you mean? Don't belong here. Not on this ship, not in their labs. The planet changed me. I don't know how to live in soft places anymore. The captain leaned forward. You don't have to go back there. Yeah, you can start again somewhere safe. He shook his head. Safe is a word I stopped believing in a long time ago. A quiet moment passed between them. Then, early the next morning, he was gone. No signs of struggle, no alarms. Just gone. A small escape pod was missing. Inside his room, it left something behind, a piece of scrap metal, shaped like a leaf. It was from the forest he had once lived in. Beside it, a note scratched into an old metal plate. Don't come looking. Survived before. Will again. The crew stood silently as they read it. No one tried to track him. They knew better. Some say he went back to the Deathworld, like it was the only place he could breathe. Others believe he found another edge of the galaxy to call home far from. Councils, orders, and scanners. But one thing was certain. He had become more than just a man. He was a legend now. A quiet story shared among pilots, engineers, and explorers. The survivor from the Deathworld, the one who beat the planet, became stronger than it. And though he was gone, his story stayed behind. A reminder to everyone, humans are not just explorers, not just survivors. When pushed to the edge, they become something even the galaxy wasn't ready for. A strange signal was picked up by a galactic recon ship as it passed near a system marked as dangerous. The crew didn't think much of it at first. Signals bounce around all the time in space-old beacons, broken tech, random noise. But this one was different. It was active. It was human. And it was coming from a planet that no one ever dared to land on. They checked the database. The planet was marked as Class 20 Deathworld. That meant extreme storms, deadly creatures, poisonous atmosphere, and crushing gravity. A place where nothing soft, nothing living should survive. Even the strongest species in the galaxy avoided it. According to every known law of science and biology, survival there wasn't just difficult, it was impossible. Still, the signal was clear. A short, repeating pattern. Old Earth-style emergency code, faint but steady. The crew sat in silence. For a while, no one wanted to say it, but the question was hanging in the air. What if someone's still alive down there? The captain gave the order to prepare for descent. The crew didn't argue, but everyone felt a chill. Landing on a Class 20 world was no small thing. Every safety warning, every training drill told them not to go. But something about that signal, about the fact that it was human, it'd feel like they couldn't ignore it. As their ship entered the planet's orbit, they saw massive electric storms spreading across the sky. Mountains of dark clouds twisted and cracked with blue lightning. Even from space, the planet looked angry. They found the crash site near the edge of a dead forest. The wreckage of an old human colony ship was half buried in ash and rock. Ship's ID confirmed ITT was from Earth, lost more than 6 years ago. No one had heard from it since. They suited up and made their way into the wreck. The air was thick, hard to breathe even with filters. Strange sounds echoed in the distance in Emil calls, deep rumbling, hissing winds. The ground shook slightly under their boots. This place felt alive, but not in a friendly way. Inside the broken ship, there was no power. Marks, claw marks, and deep scratches covered the walls. It didn't look like a crash. It looked like a battle. Something had attacked them. Something big. Just when they were about to leave, one of the crew spotted a trail. Not just damage movement. Something had dragged parts and supplies out of the wreck and deeper into the wild. It wasn't recent, but it wasn't old either. Following the trail for several kilometers, through mud and sharp rocks, they finally reached a strange cave hidden behind a cliffside. It was covered with a makeshift barrier, pieces of metal, wire, even bones. Someone had built this to keep things out. The crew opened the barrier carefully. Inside, it was dark and cold. But they saw something in the corner. A figure crouched, holding a sharp stick like a weapon. It was a human. He looked at them with wide eyes, thin, dirty, half-starved, but standing. His hands were shaking, but his stance was solid. He didn't say anything. Just stared. The crew didn't know what to say either. They'd found him, a real survivor, alone, alive. On a death world, no one was supposed to survive. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just said one thing in a dry, cracked voice. "You're late." The crew stood frozen for a few seconds. No one expected to actually find someone alive, especially not a human. The man in the cave didn't move much. His face was tired, eyes sunken, and his body looked like it had been through years of suffering. But there was something sharp in his gaze. He wasn't broken, he was aware. One of the medics stepped forward, slowly, and raised both hands to show they weren't a threat. The man didn't lower his weapon, but he didn't strike either. Simply watched, like a wild animal trying to decide if it should run or fight. The medic knelt and spoke gently. "We're here to help. We received your signal. You're safe." Now, the man didn't answer right away. Then finally, he gave a small nod, almost like he wanted to believe it. He dropped the sharp stick, but still looked ready to grab it again if needed. They helped him out of the cave. He was weak. His legs shook when he tried to walk, but he didn't ask for help. Step by step, he moved on his own. It was clear he had learned not to depend on anyone but himself. When they got back to the ship, they carefully removed his damaged Garif. It could even be called that. Most of it was patched with broken metal, dried vines, and animal skin. His boots were falling apart. His jacket had burn marks and dried blood. But somehow, it had all kept him alive. Once inside, the medical team got to work. They scanned him, cleaned his wounds, and gave him fluids. The doctors were shocked. His body showed signs of old injuries, fractured bones that had healed without proper treatment, deep cuts, and internal scarring. But what amazed them most was how strong he still was. His heart rate was steady. His muscles had adapted to the gravity. His lungs could filter some of the poison in the air outside. It didn't make sense. No human was built to handle that planet. The crew sat outside the medbay in silence. One of them whispered, "How long do you think he was out there?" One replied, "That ship crashed 6 years ago." They couldn't believe it. 6 years alone on a death world. No backup, no real shelter. And yet, he had survived. Later, when the man was awake and a bit stronger, the captain came to speak with him. They asked how he stayed alive. What happened? After the crash, the man didn't say much, just a few quiet words. They all died. I stayed, learned fast. He didn't tell the full story. Not yet, but he didn't have to. The fear in his eyes, the calm in his voice, and the scars on his body already told most of it. As the ship left the Deathworld's orbit, the crew looked back at the planet. It was still spinning under thick clouds and storms, angry and wild. But now they knew something they didn't before. Someone had survived. Down there, not just survived, fought, endured, adapted. The man didn't ask where they were going. He just sat quietly near a window, watching the stars. One of the crew tried to offer him food. He stared at the plate for a while before finally picking it up. He ate slowly, like he had forgotten what real food tasted like. Someone joked, trying to lighten the mood, "You must be the toughest human alive." The man didn't laugh. He just said, "No, I'm just the one who didn't die." The room went quiet again. This wasn't just a rescue. This was the beginning of something bigger. They had found a survivor. But what had the death world turned him into? The man they rescued stayed quiet most of the time. He didn't talk much, didn't ask questions, and didn't smile. He spent most of his time sitting near the observation window, staring out into space. He didn't seem scared. He didn't seem excited either. Just calm. To calm. The crew gave him space. They didn't want to push him. They understood he had been through things they couldn't imagine. Still, they were curious. How could a normal human survive on a world like that? What did he go through all those years alone? Slowly, the medical team ran more scans. They checked his organs, muscles, brain activity, everything. The results were shocking. His body had changed. His bones were stronger. His skin had thickened in places, like it had learned to protect itself. His reflexes were sharper than any soldier they had seen. "This man is not just alive," one doctor whispered. "He's evolved." The team looked over some of the samples he had with him. Strange roots, dried animal pieces, even a few sharp tools made from alien bones. These weren't random things. They were made with purpose. He had learned to use the planet's deadly resources for survival. The scientists on the ship started digging deeper into the planet's environment. Everything about that world screamed death. The storms could melt metal. The creatures there hunted anything that moved. Even the air had particles that could eat away at lungs. The team had worn full protective suits during their short visit, and this man had lived in that place for years, with nothing but his mind and instincts. One night, alarms went off. A wild alien creature that had latched onto the ship during liftoff had escaped containment. It was fast, aggressive, and dangerous. The crew panicked and sealed off the hallway it was in, before anyone could stop him. The man walked straight into that hallway. No armor. No weapon. Just him. Cameras showed what happened. The creature charged. He didn't run. He waited at the last moment. He moved with unbelievable speed, dodged its claws, and snapped its neck with his bare hands. One quick move. Done. The crew watched in stunned silence. He walked back out, covered in blood, but calm as ever, and simply said, "That wasn't one of the big ones." That's when it really hit them. He didn't just survive the Deathworld. He had become part of it. Some crew members started to feel nervous around him, not because he was rude or violent, but because he was so quiet, so different, so unshaken. Like a wild animal that had learned how to live among monsters and now couldn't. Go back to being tame. But not everyone was scared. A few started seeing him as something more, a symbol of what humans were really capable of. He had no high-tech gear, no weapons, no help. And still, he beat nature at its worst. He had lived through something that would have killed anyone else. In minutes, one young technician said, "If one human can do this, imagine what others could do." Maybe this wasn't just about one survivor. Maybe this was a message. Humans weren't weak. They weren't just another species in the stars. They were something else entirely. After the creature incident, the mood on the ship began to change. Some of the crew kept a respectful distance from the human survivor. They didn't talk about it much, but their eyes said it all. Fear, not the kind that made people scream. The quiet kind. The kind that made them lower their voices when he walked by. The kind that made them watch him from the corners of their eyes. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He didn't threaten anyone. But it was hard to forget what they saw. A man fighting a deadly alien with his bare hands, and not just surviving, but winning. A few crew members even requested transfers to different departments. They said it was stress, or a heavy workload. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. The captain noticed all of this. One evening, they sat down across from the man in the ship's dining area. He was eating slowly, the same way he always did, as if each bite reminded him of how different this food was from what he was used to. The captain said quietly, "You've scared some of them." The man looked up, then replied, "I scare myself. Sometimes." That was the first time he had shown a hint of vulnerability. It's just a small one, but it was there. It reminded the captain and maybe even himself that he was still human. Later, a meeting was held with the senior crew. They wanted to decide what to do next. Some believed he should be kept under supervision. Others thought he should be treated. Like any rescued survivor, a few said something that surprised everyone. He's not just a survivor. He's proof. Proof of what? Someone asked. That humans can become something more. They began looking into the original mission the crashed ship had been on. It turns out it wasn't a normal colony ship. It had been part of a secret program testing human survival on extreme planets. The Deathworld had been a mistake. No one was supposed to land there. But the crash forced them to. Most died quickly, but one didn't. That raised questions. Did the people who sent them there know it was that dangerous? Did they expect anyone to survive? And now that someone had? What did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? The ship's science team became busy analyzing everything the man had brought with him. His tools, his journal, even the dirt samples stuck to his boots. Every little thing told a story of adaptation, of learning, of changing. His journal entries were short and rough, written. On scraps, some pages were torn. Others were burned at the edges. But the words were clear. Storm hit camp again. It's lost the last of the rations. Built trap. Caught something with 6 legs. Ate it. Not poison. Pain in chest gone. Maybe body adjusted. It's quiet today. Big one nearby. Stay hidden. It weren't the writings of a madman. They were notes, strategies, survival logs. They showed someone who had refused to give up, even when everything was against him. One engineer said, "This isn't just about survival. This is about becoming stronger, smarter, faster." He didn't wait to be saved. He became what the planet forced him to be. That night, when the crew was resting, the man stood by the observation window again. Another crew member, younger and curious, came up beside him. "Do you miss Earth?" they asked. He was quiet for a long time. Then he replied, "I don't remember what it smells like." That simple sentence hit harder than anything else. He hadn't just been lost in space. He had been lost in time, in pain, in survival. Earth wasn't just far away, had become a memory, fading from his senses, and yet was still here, still standing, still human. In his own way, the longer the human survivor stayed on the ship, the more questions people had about him. What exactly had happened down there? What had he seen? What had he done to survive? He rarely talked about it, didn't offer details unless someone asked directly. Even then, his answers were short, sometimes just a single sentence. But those short replies often left people quiet for hours. One evening, while sitting in the medical bay for a routine checkup, he was asked by one of the doctors, "How did you last that long without going mad?" "I did go mad, but madness kept me alive." The doctor didn't know what to say after that. The truth was becoming clear to everyone. He hadn't just survived the planet physically, he had survived it mentally too. And that might have been even harder. Soon the ship received a message from the Galactic Council. The news had reached them. Human found alive on a Class 20. Deathworld. That kind of survival wasn't just rare, it was unbelievable. The Council didn't send congratulations. They sent orders. They wanted him brought in for questioning. Full quarantine. Psychological tests. Long-term study. To them, he wasn't a person anymore. He was something to be examined. Some crew members agreed. "We don't know what that planet did to him," they said. "It's for safety," but others were uncomfortable. "He's not an object." Someone argued, "He's a human. You can't treat him like a lab rat." The ship was stuck in the middle. Orders were orders. The man had saved them, protected them, and never once hurt anyone. He had earned more than just a cold analysis. While the debate continued, the survivor sat quietly, watching from a distance. He wasn't surprised. He had expected this. He had seen it in people before. Fear disguised as logic. Later, the captain met with him privately. "There's pressure to hand you over," the captain admitted. He nodded slowly. "I understand. They want to study you, find out what changed." Again, he didn't argue. They'll find what they want, but they won't understand it. The captain leaned forward. "Then help us understand." And finally, the man opened up. "Oh, man, too dull, but enough." He talked about the early days when he still hoped for rescue. When he built signal towers out of broken parts, he buried the last of his team. When the storms tore through everything he tried to build, He spoke of hunger so deep it made him hallucinate, of beasts that hunted without eyes, of hiding inside the belly of a dead creature just to stay warm through the night, he talked about. Fear so constant it became background noise. And eventually, how that fear turned into instinct. I stopped trying to escape, he said. I started learning, watching, copying what survived. That's how he made it. Not because he was the strongest or smartest, but because he adapted. He stopped wishing the world would change. He changed himself instead. The captain listened without speaking. There were no more questions after that. Only silence. That night, the crew held a quiet vote. Would they follow the council's command and send him away like some dangerous subject? Or would they defend him? The vote was close. But in the end, they chose him. They chose to protect him. Not out of fear, but out of respect. He had become more than just a survivor. He was proof of what a human could become when pushed to the very edge, and that kind of strength. This wasn't something to be locked away. It was something to be honored.